Let's see, Juan, can supplementation fail to produce desired results in some people determined to have a deficiency? No, not in my experience. When supplementation fails to produce a desired result, it's not usually the supplements that are failing. It's typically an underlying problem that hasn't been fully identified or addressed. So generally, supplementation works if we know we need to supplement and we have scientifically sound, objective data that says this person needs more of this nutrient. It's not that fails. Generally, the supplementation will work, but whether or not, I think what most people think is, hey, if I'm low in B5 and I supplement with B5, does that automatically mean that my pain's going to go away? Well, not necessarily. Your pain might go away if the cause of your pain being there is a B5 deficiency. And so you have to understand that these nutrient deficiencies can cause pain, but there's a lot of causes for pain. These are just some of them. And so these are some of the more common ones that I see being the most effective and oftentimes being deficient in people with chronic autoimmune problems. So it's generally not supplementation that fails as much as it is a lack of working from all of the objective data that's necessary to help isolate and identify what the origin of the person's problem is. Let's see here. Can't comment on other people's books. What to do in case of salivary gland issue 15 years ago, radiotherapy in my neck. I wonder if it can heal without removing the gland. The first thing I would say, Sophia, is get with your doctor and have a full nutritional workup done. It's possible that, radiotherapy can be pretty harsh on the glands and you might have permanent damage. It's hard to say. But at the very least, get a full nutritional workup so that if you do have some deficiencies or things that are lacking, then you can add those into your diet and give your body every opportunity to heal. Is there a relationship between gluten sensitivity and sacralization of L5? Not to my knowledge, Donna. Sacralization of L5 is when L5 in the sacrum actually fuse is generally what we would consider to be a congenital defect. And I haven't seen anybody research that in any great depth as it relates to gluten. Let's see. Yeah, all grains in the UK contain mold. It's our climate and the big vats they're kept in. Yeah, mold is a major problem, no doubt about it. Crohn's disease and psoriasis. A friend of mine has both of these issues and her face gets blistered from the medicine the doctors have her on. Under her eyes, it looks like she has black eyes. Yeah, she's got to get real about root cause resolution. She can't just keep medicating the symptoms of the disease. Why does drinking water make my mouth and throat dry? It depends on the water that you're drinking. Some people drink reverse osmosis water and they're dehydrated. And RO water is great. It's the cleanest water. And if you have to drink city water, that, in my opinion, is still the cleanest water to drink. But it can be very helpful to add electrolytes back into the water when you do filter it. So if you're drinking RO water and that's the case, make sure I have something called Ultra Electrolytes. You can check it out. But add, for every 20 ounces of water, add about a half a teaspoon of that, and that should help potentially keep you better hydrated. Let's see. Gut. Oh, no, that's not a question. Is ascorbic acid true vitamin C, or is it just one of the attributes that make up whole vitamin C? It's a good question. If we're talking about the whole molecule of vitamin C, in science, we talk about all the vast science. What are the benefits of vitamin C? Then kind of vitamin C and ascorbic acid are used synonymously. But if we're talking about whole food-based vitamin C, no, not all of the components of whole food-based vitamin C are going to be in ascorbic acid. However, again, if we're talking about the research and the therapeutic effectiveness of vitamin C, most of it's done on ascorbic acid. And so that's where you're going to see differences. There's really no great research on whole plant foods-based vitamin C being more effective than ascorbic acid. Actually, most of the research is pointed at high doses of ascorbic acid being extremely effective. So some people will gravitate toward kind of some of these food-based supplements where they talk about a plant-based form of the whole aspect of vitamin C, and that's fine. You can do that. But if you really need high-dose vitamin C, ascorbic acid is where it's at. Let's see. Do you recommend curcumin for pain or boswellia for inflammation for RA? I do, but why are those not on the list? I'm so glad you asked that question. Here's why they're not on that list. They're both great. They're very potent anti-inflammatories. They have modulatory effects around inflammation and pain, and there's a lot of research on both of them. However, those compounds, boswellia and curcumin, are not essential to the diet, meaning they're not essential nutrients. My philosophy is essentiality has to come first. Okay, then we can look at plant medicines. You have to understand that curcumin and boswellia are plant medicines. The whole premise of medicine is to alter biochemically the expression of chemical outcomes in an effort to attempt to mitigate symptoms. In essence, here's something to take to reduce your symptoms. If we use boswellia and curcumin to treat pain, then we're really not finding out why the pain exists. So the same thing, doctors make mistakes, in my opinion, like this all the time, where they use aspirin to treat pain, or where they use, they use a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory or a steroid to treat pain, but they're not asking why is the pain there. To me, it's infinitely more important to ask why the pain is there than to treat it even with something natural. If you use natural agents to treat your pain, it's what we call green medicine. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with doing that if you can't figure out why the pain exists. But if you haven't even asked the question, my advice to you would be get with a good functional medicine practitioner and start asking the deeper question, which is why is the pain there in the first place? Does lead in the gut cause leaky gut? Yes, it can. There's some research studies showing that lead opens up the gut barrier and yes, definitely can cause a leaky gut issue. Are borderline vitamin nutritional deficiencies as potentially serious as deficiencies? I've heard you mention and have a few deficiencies and even more borderline. Any thoughts? Depends. That's a clinical call typically, Addie. Sometimes yes and sometimes no. And so it's hard to answer that question just based on the simplicity of it. It could be deeper than that. But generally speaking, the difference between a borderline deficiency and a functional deficiency is a functional deficiency means your cells are no longer functioning adequately. A borderline deficiency means they're close to losing their function. And in some cases, I've seen functional borderline deficiencies be just as detrimental as the major deficiency. Is dry mouth caused by IgA deficiency? No, typically dry mouth causes IgA deficiency, but not the other way around. Does my thyroid medication cause problems? I take Armor. I don't know if your thyroid medicine causes problems. That would be a conversation you'd want to ask your prescribing doctor. But as far as Armor containing any kind of gluten, last I looked, it didn't. Armor didn't contain any form of gluten. So if you're trying to follow a gluten-free diet, that, again, the best thing you can do is ask the pharmacist or look on what's called the inactive ingredients on the label of your medication. Let's see here. What's your best snack that I eat? Wow, that's kind of a general one. Best snack? Well, it depends because taste is relative, right? For me, one of my favorite snacks in a pinch is beef jerky, grass-fed beef jerky. It's a company called Nick Sticks. I think we have a link to them on Gluten Free Society under the food category. But that's one of my favorite, quick go-tos. If you're a vegetarian and that wouldn't work for you, then just generally a piece of fruit, maybe a handful of nuts, something super easy. Again, the best snack is something that you like, that you will eat when you're in a pinch, and that's easy and transportable, and it has a relatively longer shelf life. So like on my desk in my office, I keep a couple of apples, I keep a bag of almonds as a kind of a go-to in a pinch. Usually I bring my lunch with me, but sometimes you're in a rush and you get out of the house and you don't quite have what you need. And I'm a big fan of fasting when I don't have real food. So like as opposed to eating what's available, I generally will make the decision to fast instead of snacking on something that isn't good for me. Let's see. How to help compressed nerve herniations from a car accident? It's a good question, Ken. If you've got compressed nerves from disc herniations, if they're in your lumbar spine or your low back, I would suggest that you get with a good chiropractor, probably the best doctor as it relates to treating disc herniations post-MVA motor vehicle accident. There's a type of therapy a lot of chiropractors perform called spinal decompression, and can be a very, very effective along with spinal manipulation to help take pressure off the discs and off those nerves. So I get with a really solid, good chiropractor with a great reputation in your area, and maybe even inquire as to whether or not they perform spinal decompression as a therapy. Okay, let's see here. Could chronic intake of Xanax justify or worsen symptoms that suggest scalloped tongue? Well, no, not that I've ever seen. Chronic intake of Xanax, more than anything else, just robs you of your sovereignty to function. But I've never seen it or clinically made any kind of correlation between that medicine and a scalloped tongue. See, Melody says, if you take the genetic test for gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity and it is positive, is the positive result saying you are allergic to gluten or just have the genes that would make you prone? Is it a definitive test? So Melody, yeah, so you have a really good question. Genetically, if you have the genes for gluten sensitivity, you shouldn't eat gluten. Because it does, it's a predisposition test, but it really, what predisposes you to reacting to gluten if you have gluten genes? Eating it. Right? So what activates those genes? It's kind of like if you have predisposition to diabetes, what predisposes you to developing the diabetes? Eating sugar. So it's the same thing with gluten. If you have gluten sensitivity positive genes, then the way you activate those genes to produce the inflammation is by eating or exposing them to gluten. So the way you want to look at a gluten genetic test is if you have a positive result, then the best move for you to stay healthy is to get gluten out of your diet. Whether you have celiac disease or not, whether you have autoimmune disease or not. Some people, remember, gluten-induced autoimmune disease can take decades to develop. The average person with celiac disease doesn't get a diagnosis for upwards of 30 years. It takes about 35 years on average to get a diagnosis, because most doctors don't train in nutrition and they're just not looking for nutritionally related types of situations. So you don't want to wait for 30 years of gluten-induced damage to become so severe that you finally have the ability to get a diagnosis. Remember, getting that diagnosis isn't the imperative part. Recognizing how you should change and improve your diet, it is, in my opinion. Okay. I think we're out of time, folks. We got more questions coming in than what I have time to answer. But hey, look, if you've got more questions and you want to see me cover different topics, shoot me an email over at glutenology@gmail.com. Look, we're taking your topic ideas. We try to produce topics that you guys want. We certainly want to take care of you, and we want to cover things that you have great interest in. Also, make sure you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. We have the largest gluten-free newsletter in the world. And look, sign up for the newsletter if you're not already signed up. We'll send you a bunch of great, wonderful, free information on how to navigate the gluten-free lifestyle in an appropriate manner. So make sure you come over there and sign up. When you do, you'll get a free gluten-free survival guide to your inbox right away. We'll send that over right away. Also, make sure you subscribe to the feed and to the channel. And remember, make sure you share it. The more you share the information, the more people receive it. The more people receive it, the more we can all help together. Remember, the mission here is to save 100 million lives. So if you're part of that mission and you want to help me out, give me a love, give me a like, give me a thumbs up. Again, the more of those we get, the more of this information is shared through social media channels. So share it, and we'll see you next Monday night, again, 6 p.m., same time, same channel for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Have a fantastic week. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.